I come from the European Council of Doctoral Candidates and Junior Researchers. It means that I represent early career researchers, PhD candidates, postdocs, and other junior researchers all across Europe. Eurodoc is an organization of organizations, so we have national members that does the same in the different European countries, and that's to give the context of the perspective I speak from. And I would say it's a hard act to follow both Louise and René. I'm very happy what you mentioned, but I want to take a step even further back and say when we talk about research and higher education, I think perhaps in the given times we should all start by reminding ourselves of what the mission of research and higher education is. And in Europe, there is a democratic mission. And I think that has to be in, like, currently we have to keep that in our mind constantly. And that has to shine through in everything we do, in every conversations we have about what is a sustainable, what's a sustainable reform of research assessment. And when the two previous, or especially René, when you say, like, how do we align with open science principles? It's the same questions with everything else, with all the values, with research integrity. And I think we should see open science as a value in that sense, on the same level as research integrity, together with the other academic values of academic freedom, institutional autonomy, academic governance. And that means that people like me have to be part of the conversation. You can't make it without me. And that has to really be into the core of when we reform research assessment. It has a reform of research assessment, if it is to be sustainable, if it is to get us towards the mission, then it has to align with the values, not the other way around. It is not such that we are to shape our values and our mission around research assessment. It's research assessment that has to reflect that. And that all sounds very, very high level. And where do we then get to actually embedding it? Where do we get to this actually matter? I come from Eurodoc, and we have been a partner in the consortium of OPUS. And I think I want to take it back to OPUS and say OPUS is a massive success. In terms of the 5 pilots institutions we have, this is real change. But they also pointed at something in that it is also vulnerable change, that perhaps the next academic leadership will have other priorities. So there is an open question of how do we embed it so strongly into the structures. And this is where you can say, perhaps especially James and Science Europe and also Eurodoc comes into play, that we have to take the conversation at a European level and talk about the structures that matters the most. And particularly, we have to talk about how do we assess the PhD? How do we assess the postdocs when they apply for national funding, when they stand on their own legs for the first time and have to do the independent application? How do we assess the academic career? How many here in the room comes from a country that has a habilitation or an examination post-PhD process that de facto controls whether you progress in your academic career or not? Because if we leave those structures out of the conversation, we do incremental change in institutions, and that is excellent. But if we are to really solidify it and reform the research assessment, we have to look at the structures that affects most of us. So for me, if this has to matter, I have to literally see it in the job vacancies, in the assessment processes of me and my friends. I have to, and there I have to ask the question, do we actually think currently that open science practices, you hinted a little bit at it, James, that it is in the strategies, but it's perhaps not in the actual assessment processes. Are the actual assessment processes aligned with open science principles and values and the other academic values, not just open science, all of them? Are they aligned? And if not, how do we align them better? Not perfectly, but just better. What is the easiest thing we can do to make that alignment stronger? And there I actually think that perhaps that's the greatest success of the OPUS, is the framework. Because the framework don't only provide this division between, you can say, like open science on one hand, and then like the general assessment and saying that open science is always a lens, that's a method that can be used with the other academic values as well, and other priorities as well. And it's not an exercise in that we all have to do everything, but it provides a method where we can take the framework and go, I'm going to focus a bit on James here again, but go to Science Europe and ask, like, if we look at the postdoc funding schemes, are they actually aligned or not? If we take the OPUS framework and apply, and we can take it to the structures of examination. I really don't want to look at the one, those who are from France knows that the examination process post-PhD in France is extremely complicated. But if we take it to some of the other countries across Europe that has habilitation or habilitation-like processes, we can also take the OPUS framework and go there and say, well, where are the tensions that works against an open science alignment and research assessment? And that, I think, is interested with the OPUS project, that it provides something we can do for the future. Thank you.